What is release planning in Agile? Hello, happy Sunday. And today I did promise that we are going to examine what release planning is all about in Agile. I hope you're having a great day. And yesterday we actually had a good time talking about PI planning, right? And I think the day before yesterday we had a conversation on the different Scrum events. So there have been three set of videos which we have been having in the past 3 days. So today's the end of three and 2 more days to go. So I actually did make a promise that for the next 5 days I want to teach at least one new things. One new thing. Hello, welcome to the Scrum chat room with Dr. Francis Ibunya. Today we want to talk about release planning. And let me know where you're watching us from so that I can give you a shout out. I see Dion Wiesen. Hello, Dion. Happy joining us. Let me know where you're connecting from. Meanwhile, we are going to go straight into our conversation of release planning. Now, I'm going to handle a couple of different aspects. I will talk about what release planning is all about. And then I'm also going to talk about the role of Scrum Master and release planning. I will also talk about the cadence of release planning. And then I'm going to take time now. I'll leave some time to answer questions on what questions you may have about release planning. And we are going to call it a day. Hello, I see. Um, okay, definitely not gonna pronounce the name wrong. So for that reason, I probably will not pronounce it. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and start the conversation for today. What is release planning in Agile, or what's your understanding of release planning? What sense do you make when we talk about release planning? In the right sense. Okay. Now, when we talk about release planning, let's kind of one of the things I love about Scrum and Agile is about the flexibility and the opportunity it also gives you to become the expert, right? Because we don't have a Scrum is not like a science. No, science is about facts, right? But then Scrum it's more of leadership. So leadership you can target stuff from almost every angle, but then the rationale of what is considered the truth. So when we talk about release planning in Agile, think about it in a sense of you run a small business and let's say you produce a t-shirt, right? Okay, perfect. That's a perfect example. Let's say you produce t-shirt and I come to you and say, okay, you know what, I need 100,000 t-shirt. Now, the first question you are going to ask me is, how soon do you need it? Like, okay, I need it done by tomorrow. Like, okay, it's not possible for me to get to 100,000 t-shirt tomorrow. Right. So what are we gonna do? We are going to come in an agreement like, okay, you know what? Can you get me 200 tomorrow? And maybe by Wednesday you get a batch of 200. So we'll come to an agreement on how we plan on the way you are going to deliver them to me. What is going to affect the way that we plan is going to base on my need. Right. So if I need everything by the end of this coming week, and you cannot meet up without demand, then we cannot have an arrangement. So when we talk about release planning in Agile, because this is also a confusing topic, especially when a lot of people go to interviews like, "Oh, what's your role in release planning?" And also, release planning is not an official Scrum event, right? But it's a concept which, if you work in a Scrum environment, then you should be able to understand what it means. So, in a very summary or in a nutshell, when we talk about release planning, we simply mean that what is the plan in order to release the final product to the customer, but it can also be what is the plan in order to release the product for internal use. Because sometimes when we talk about customer in the space of Agile, we're always thinking about we're selling it to somebody, Right. Most organizations build products that are more of the infrastructure, which means that are consumed internally within the organization. So when we talk about release planning, it's not only about going out externally. It simply means that when are we going to make this product available for use? Right. In some environment, we talk about when are we going to go live? When are we're going to release it to our customer? Now, the reason why Scrum or Agile, it's a very flexible tool, and a lot of companies are diving into it because it gives us that flexibility to be able to release our product one part after another, one part after another. Now, let's think about WhatsApp, right? A lot of people uses WhatsApp. If you think about WhatsApp from when it started, where you could only do chat, and when they kind of release the functionality of you could actually make a call, and then they release the functionality you could do a video call. Now they release another functionality you could do a group video call limiting to 8 people. Now they've expanded it, and they started with all seven WhatsApp group with a maximum of, let's say, 250 people. Now they've been able to increase the capacity of up to 500, 1,000. Okay, that's a perfect example of how to understand release planning. It simply means that we could make available part of the functionality for the public or for the customer to start using, while the other part can come. And because Agile is about incremental development, it provides us that opportunity to be able to release in part. So anytime you hear about release planning, think about it's how about the customer, how the customer want us to get the product to them. Then we, the organization, we now plan on how to release based on a certain number of factors. Number one, based on the product roadmap. So release planning start right from the product roadmap. What's the product roadmap? The product roadmap gives us an idea of the end-to-end process on how we are going to build the entire product with couple of milestones along the way. Now, based on the entire roadmap and based on now the resources we have, and based on when we talk about resources, we're talking about both the materials and the human resource, which is the labor. Now, based on now the resources, we can now make a plan on exactly when the customer get it. The fact that we get a product roadmap is one aspect, right? We know exactly when we are getting in from end to end. That's one aspect. But what if we don't have the resource, the capability, the capacity to deliver? And sometimes we might even plan on how to deliver based on a specific capacity or based on a specific cadence. But things change along the way. Maybe some of our developers quit and then our capacity go down. Maybe there are changes in the market situation and we have a whole lot of changes that are happening. So release planning simply means, or simply kind of give us an idea that say how are we going to be able to deliver this. All right. Now, when we talk about release planning number one should start from the level of the portfolio, right? There is a bigger estimation when management actually engage. When we talk about product delivery, the first level of engagement is from leadership and management, right? Before the Scrum team is even brought in, the Scrum team most often do not even have direct contact to the customer. When we ever talk about the Scrum Master or the product owner relating to the customer, most of the cases the customer should be the product manager, the internal customer. So the person who negotiate the deal on the project, who talk about the budget and every stuff, is the person, is the owner of, we'll call them is the CIO, the chief information officer, the person who have the information for us to be able to understand exactly what to do. Now, based on the information this person have, that information is passed down to product manager and then passed down to the team level. So when we talk about release planning, is not something that happens at the level of the Scrum team. That includes your developer, your PO and the Scrum Master. No, it includes management, because release planning is also based on resources, based on budget, and all of that. Now, you already have an understanding that if you work with a Scrum team, we don't talk about budget, right? The reason we don't talk about budget is because we're more interested in delivering value to the team. Now, you understand that when you want to focus on value, money is not a problem, right? And that's why, let's say, you can have a very, let's say, a presidential party to attend, and you might invest, let's say, $10,000 to get a gown or a suit that you'll put it on, right? Why? The value of the occasion take out money is not longer a problem. But now, if we bring it to a case where the value, you don't really see the value, you start bargaining the pricing. Oh, this is too expensive and all of that, right? So in that case, we have to understand that what that's why the Scrum team don't talk about budget. Scrum team, we don't talk about budget because we want to focus on value, right? And that's because we want to deliver value to the customer. So, but that's another day conversation. Let me not confuse you. Let's go back and talk about our release planning. So, summary: release planning simply means how do we plan to release this to our customer? And I just gave you an example. Think about uh, the way WhatsApp has been continuously releasing new features, WhatsApp for business. Now, WhatsApp is even giving you the opportunity to advertise or to upload a status and share it directly on Facebook. Those are like different releases that are coming up. Maybe in a couple of months will come, they might surprise us with other new functionality. Maybe they even have an opportunity to start doing the conference call for companies and works and all of that, right? So that's release planning. All right. Now, who should be part of a release planning? In most of the environment, the Scrum Master or the people at the team level are not part of release planning. All right. In most of the cases, at the team level, they are not part of release planning. They might have a release team that handle almost everything. Now, in this case, what happened is that the the cadence or the product owner collaborate with the product manager to prioritize the work that the team will do in such a way that they plan to release that early on time. The plan that you finish early on time. Right. Now, sometimes pressure comes from management. Oh, we need this by tomorrow. We need this by the next day. But they don't actually give you information is because this is start to release, right? This is an environment where the team is not involved in release. It's not really a good practice because the team actually need to be aware of what release is all about. When you use, for instance, Jira, there is a future where we have option to tag story into releases, and it gives more better accountability. But in most of the cases, you might not have that, right? But in case you are involved in release planning, what we are going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at are the different features that we plan to deliver to the client. That's the first component. And then we are looking at how does this or how do this feature fit into our different iteration or different sprint, right? We see that okay, customer is expecting this by, let's say, September 30th. And now between now and September 30th, we're looking at a period of 60 days. And within those 60 days, we're looking at four different sprints. Now, can we kind of split this into four different sprints? Can we complete this based on our resources and also based on our capacity? Can we complete this within 60 days? And that's when we can plan to say, okay, this go out by this go out by this. And now we now create releases and we start monitoring the progress of the team based on releases. In most of the environment, the effectiveness of the Scrum Master or the effectiveness of the team is evaluated based on their ability to meet their releases, right? Because that's what's important to the customer. The customer is not interested about your bend down chart, your velocity chart. That only happens sit at the team level. The customer is more interested about you delivering what you promised to deliver. Right. Now, if you think about release planning in alignment with a scale agile environment like SAFe, what is equivalent to they do what we call PI planning, right? Now, when we do PI planning in a safe environment, now we have a release manager. They don't do release planning separate. We have a release manager because work now that need to go out is planned based on the different PI. And now we have the release manager that will now tag different aspect into different releases and can coordinate from that aspect. So in most of the cases, we might not have like separate release management team, but in a scrum environment you might have release management team, release planning, because there is no bigger meetings that actually include almost everybody that will be engaged in releases on the process, like in a scale agile environment. All right. So, who are the participants in release planning? The participants should include anyone who have the power to make the decision. So, in most of the cases, you have business leaders and you have some managers that you have never even seen if you have a release planning. So, anyone who has the power to make a decision on how this should delay, the decision on the budget, anyone should be in there. Now, in most of the cases, the entire Scrum team might not be part of the release planning meeting. We might pull some of the team lead to actually represent in the release planning meeting. So the release planning meeting might not engage everybody in the team, right? We might just pull out some certain key aspect. I've also worked in a team where release planning is purely, even Scrum Master don't attend release planning, right? It's purely agile coaches, product owners, managers. So in these cases, these have been like the line of people engaged in release planning. So there is no specific requirement of who should attend, as in the case of event. Remember, release planning is not an official event, so there are no specific requirement. But who should attend is who have the power to make a decision when the project should go out, and also on the other side, who is part of those who will be doing the work. So those are those who should be engaged in release planning. Now, let's come to the release calendar. The release calendar simply mark out the date where we are planning to release key features. Now, the release calendar is very important, and at least the Scrum Master and the product owner should have access to this release calendar. Why should the Scrum Master and the product owner have access to the release calendar? They should have access to the release calendar in order to do what? In order to help coach the team. The more we become aware on what is happening next, the more we become more conscious, right? Awareness create result. Awareness create result. So when the team members are more aware, or your developers are more aware on what are the expectations, and you constantly use this information to coach them, then they can be more effective. Now, it is also very important in a release, in your release planning, that don't only have this date in the calendar. If it's possible for you to tag your stories into releases and monitor them from your board, this will also be a better way to keep your team alert, and also to make sure that everyone aligns with uh, the goal of certifying the customer. The only way we certify the customer is that we release when exactly when we promise them that we're gonna release. It's not having good velocity. It's not having good bend down chart. Is the product going out? Yes, and that's also the reason why sometimes you always have this question: why is velocity not a true measure of success? Now, velocity is good. It shows that, oh, we've completed so much work. Yes, that's fine, but is it work ready to go out? You might complete all the work, but it has a lot of fault, or you have a lot of bugs, but it cannot actually go out. So completing work doesn't actually make it go out. All right, perfect. Please make sure you click the share button. Put a comment. Also, let me know where you're working from. Edit Smith, Cyprian, Kellen, hey Joseph, Javis, Rudas, and everyone joining in. Thank you for joining in. Tucson, hey, Coach Catherine, I see you there. Ice Scrum TV, I see you there. Esther, I see you there, and everyone joining in. So make sure you share. We are going to go into a moment. I'll start taking questions now, so you can start putting down your questions. Any question you have about release planning, put it down, and then I'm going to take the next 10 to 15 minutes and answer the question before we wrap up with our presentation for today. So, this I was talking about the release calendar and how you can effectively manage these different releases. Now, I think one of the point which I know many people will also be interested about, which we can get another time to talk about that, is going a bit more technical in releases to look at the release tool. Okay, now before we talk about that, let me talk about the role of a scrum master in release, right? The role of a scrum master in release, very important. Now, in an environment where the scrum master actually has to participate in the release planning, what would be the role of the scrum master? Number one, the scrum master should understand exactly, should understand to master the release calendar, right? Perfect. Now, secondly, when you master the release calendar, master which of the futures have been tagged to go out on what date. Now, gain clarity with your team members on the stories that need to be attached to those features. Because sometimes the reason why I say gain clarity with your team members, sometimes not all the stories might be tagged to futures. So most often, even when you can tag them, also gain more clarity. Now, when you gain clarity with your Scrum Master, with your team members, and ensure that all the stories attached to those releases, you can now effectively monitor how the stories are bending down towards the release. This you can check them on your release tab, right? Release tab on Jira. So if you don't know this, you're invited to join our community, and we are going to help you understand exactly how these things work. So it's also very important for, especially for those who are interviewing, make sure you're practicing. You practice all of this, get yourself familiar. Yes, it's good we come online, we'll have a conversation about this, but sometimes if you don't get your hands on the board, work with teams, you might not really understand this. So we also offer a community of practice that help you to learn all of this in practice, right? And if you want to learn more about it, send me a text. You can see my number scrolling as a send me a text. I'm interested to learn more about Scrum, and we can talk about that. All right. So make sure that you also gain clarity with your team member on the what are the stories that are supposed to be under those features. Now, when you gain those clarity, now what you want to do is that uh proud to at least always kind of ensure that your team member complete their work at least 2 weeks, at least in my environment it's even 1 month, like 1 month before the release date. You want to make sure you don't want a scenario where a release is happening by the 15th of August and then there are stories still hanging by the 10th. No. Why is it important to create, to ensure that if we are releasing, let's say by the 30th of August, we need to put a deadline like all stories must come in by the 15th of August? It's important because if there are any fixes, there are any delay, at least we have like a week to push through to complete any of those delays. And also it's very important because the time when we're releasing, we do what we call code freeze, which means that we stop any development work so that changes are not made. After we do all our testing and validate that everything is okay, and we do what we call code freeze. And then we also need to do ready to go and sign off all the documents to ensure that, okay, we plan to release A, B, C, D. So the Scrum Master, if you're in charge in release planning, you need to make a summary of everything that is supposed to go with that release. And in most of the cases, especially in bigger environment, releases are done during weekends because they don't, most of the cases, they want to freeze the system so that someone doesn't go in there, change some stuff, and then spoil the whole stuff. Or They might do them late in the night where there are no activities, just to make sure they freeze the system in that stuff. Now, the Scrum Master always, if you're in charge of the release planning, you have a checklist of everything that go out. You have a sign off document, and then you are just sitting there. There's nothing you are doing. You're following up with your team and with the release manager what is happening, and then making sure that you're checking if everything effectively was released, right? If everything was released, now you can confirm that, okay, future A was released successfully, future B was released successfully, feature C actually failed because XYZ, and we want to communicate all of that. And most of the cases, your management can, your developers can be releasing, and they say, oh, we're having a problem with XYZ, and we need, let's say, the DevOps engineer. Now, you, the Scrum Master, will need to find a way on how to get a DevOps engineer. Now, in most of the cases, because releases happen in the after working hours, weekend or so, so you should have like the direct contact of all of these people, so that if something happen, you are not going to the system to send an email. They are not there. You need to call them directly, right? In most of the cases, when there are releases, you need to ensure that all of these people are aware and they can prepare on time. All right, perfect. Let me see how many questions we have. Put down your questions. I'm gonna answer them. When I answer them to the last question, then we can wrap up for today. And tomorrow, we pick another topic, right? If you want me to talk also on a topic tomorrow, you can put it on the chat. Let me see. I might pick one of the topic that comes on the chat to talk about it tomorrow. All right. Edit said the rule of Scrum Master and release planning. We just discussed that right now. What's the difference between release planning and deployment? That's a good question, Lola. Now, deployment simply means that we are moving an increment, or we are moving a functionality from one environment to another. Right. Now, when we say, no, remember, we manage the way we build product with tools, right? Um, Project management tool like Jira, Azure DevOps, Rally. Right. Now, developers are building those code maybe in their environment using their Python or their Java stuff, and they're building those code. So when they finish, they need to move it to a place where it align with other part of the product that are already existing. So moving from one environment to another, it's called deployment. Moving from one environment to another is called deployment. So we deploy to production, we move from one environment to another. Release actually means that we are done with building it and we want to start using it. So that is the difference between uh, that's the difference between what again? Difference between release and deployment. Rogers from UK. Oh wow, RTE. Yeah, maybe I might have some time to talk about RTE. I'll think about that. For all our RTEs on board, I might create a day and let's have a conversation about RTEs, right? Um, okay, then we have a question also here, and it says, "Can you present to us a real life experience of a product release plan? Who facilitate release plan RTE? In a safe environment, yes, the RTE is the one coordinating the entire process, but the RTE is not the main person in charge of release planning, right? The RTE facilitates PI planning. There's a slight difference between, now, PI planning is done in a safe environment. We don't so much pay attention in release planning, but there's always a release manager that coordinate the process. Releases simply means what we're sending out to go live, right? So, real life experience of product release plan. Okay, can I do that? Can I do that? Can I do that? Maybe yes, maybe no, but I can do that if I pick if I pick more like a demo project, not like a project I've worked on, right? Why? Because we also need to make sure that we protecting the information of our company, so we cannot use those real life example, but we can create a prototype and then we can demonstrate. That's going to require us to do some PowerPoint presentation and all of that, right? And maybe with StreamYard, it might not be the best way to do that, but I'm gonna figure that out. Is release planning done in both Scrum and Scale Agile? Yes. When we build, it need to go out. So that release planning in the Scale Agile environment align with the PI planning, right? Then there's a release manager that when work is completed, they manage how it actually goes out. In a Scrum environment, it's more pronounced because they don't have a high level planning that involve decision makers. So that is why release planning now it's more key, or it's more visualized in a Scrum environment. All right. Is there a difference between release planning and delivery coordination? They're just synonyms. So they should be synonyms. Now, release delivery coordination. In some cases, different environments find a way to how to call different stuff. So you also need to understand what they mean by delivery coordination. For instance, some environment call a Scrum Master delivery lead, right? So it just depends the environment where we are all aligning it. How often is release planning? There's no cadence for release planning. Number one, because it's not an event. Number two is based on the product. If I'm working on a product that we only need it to go out December, now I cannot release it every month. If I'm working on a product that the company use need it every 2 weeks, my cadence will be 2 weeks. So the cadence is going to be based on the product. Most often when we're working on a very large product, we have like there might be like monthly releases. They might plan releases to happen at the end of every month, because in this said that when releases are happening, sometimes we need to freeze the system, so we can also plan that to happen at any particular point. Carol, my number is on the screen. You can send me a text and I'll find some time to talk to you, or you can send me a direct message. Yeah, just send me a text. I'll find a way to talk to you. Right. So that's the best way to reach out to me. Okay, so this was it about release planning. Yeah, for newbies also, we run training as well. We run training for Scrum Masters, we run training for ROTEs, we run trainings for product owner. If you're interested in knowing the cadence or how frequent we run this training, reach out to me and I'm also gonna share that information with you. All right, Andy, if there was any question I missed out and I wasn't able to answer it right here, you can also feel free to send me a text. I might not respond to it immediately, but I'll find time to answer it. But it's always great to come and share. While I'm sharing, I'm learning from all of these great questions that are coming through. But let's say tomorrow we're gonna have a conversation at 11 lunchtime. I'll make it lunchtime. Let me quickly look at my calendar to confirm what time we are going to have this conversation tomorrow. Tomorrow it's a Monday. All right, perfect. Yes. It's going to be lunchtime, 12:30 Central Time. For that, I'll put a post up today. For this one today, I did not put a post because I wasn't quite sure about the time. But for tomorrow, I'm going to put a post up 12:30 Central Time tomorrow. We are going to meet. For my friends in London, I think that's going to be 6:30 p.m. I'm sure the difference is about 6:30 p.m. or 5:30 p.m., one of those. Okay, do have a great Sunday, and I'm going to see you in my next broadcast. And for those who watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. I'm definitely going to be releasing a couple of great videos this week on YouTube. It's not going to be a live video. Oh, and also this I'm also going to release a video tomorrow on questions and answers. Right, tomorrow questions and answer on YouTube. Watch out on that and let's get connected.